Hi there. I'm going to go ahead and give you an overview of my service learning project with Idaho Parents Unlimited. They are the statewide parent training and information center as well as the family-to-family health information center. And prior to my current work as a director now with the Idaho Anti-Trafficking Coalition, I worked as the program coordinator with Idaho Parents Unlimited. So I am aware of some of the grant goals and objectives, but specific to their goals that have been written that have not been met yet. So something that I offered while I transitioned out of the office into a new position is that I would offer my services through the service learning program, and of course they were thrilled, but it gives me not only some key insight and understanding, I'm fully aware of what those goals and objectives are, very specific to the grants, and so I was able to jump in and help not only create some additional projects within this service learning program, but really enhance on it. So the first thing that we did, which was in addition to our very specific goals, which we'll get into those next, but something else that we did, we added this, and this was to take some of the old curriculum within Idaho Parents Unlimited. It's called Journey to Adulthood curriculum that we would normally host to youth who are in transition and also to their parents on what it's like to transition through the puberty process. And though maybe an uncomfortable conversation, something that's really important when you really want to dive into safety, especially in this case specific to children's mental health. What makes this one unique is that the Idaho Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health asked that Idaho Parents Unlimited create a curriculum specific to children's mental health for one of their monthly trainings. We thought this would be a perfect opportunity to add to our service learning program, and that I would help provide and create additional dialogue and curriculum to this current curriculum on online safety, parent tools for monitoring and online safety, as well as signs and symptoms for possible trafficking victims. But what we did was this met not only the Idaho Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health, one of their grant goals, it actually met Idaho Parents Unlimited in one of their grant goals, and that they would partner with the mental health agency and we would create a new curriculum. So what that did was through this process, we incorporated some of the original content, which was, how to communicate with your child, different types of gender communication as well, stages, and specifically developmental stages as well. And then we really tailored it to mental health. So what does that look like if we have a child with anxiety or depression or maybe OCD? And so we were able to give key examples of what it's like to help through that process, especially if we are dealing with some of those mental health issues as far as cycling or the processes. So if we have early onset of psychosis, that might not be the exact time that we want to talk about monitoring online use, right? So we wanted to develop a curriculum that would help kind of create a family structure, and so it was more so embedded in just a daily living rather than targeting it during specific times, especially reactive. And something we really wanted to remove was that reactive tone in parents, and where maybe children are utilizing online use too much. Oftentimes it can become obsessive, compulsive, but we more so want to identify that there's risks to it. So in doing that, we received such great feedback, and it was a statewide training. It was broadcasted in all of the Medicaid hubs within Children's Mental Health, and also the Department of Health and Welfare. And beyond that, families within both listservs were given opportunities to sign on to this, and then it was publicly announced through different social media outlets. So we had a huge turnout, which again was online, but it was interactive and it was live. So in addition to that, we were, multiple people requested and asked if we could do a part 2 of this training. We kind of ended it at just trafficking signs and symptoms, or possible key indicators or predictors, and because of that we decided that we would create a part 2, and that is something that we just now finalized, and then that will be broadcasted next month, actually in May. And so that'll be the part 2. We already have, I think, over 100 people registered for that statewide training. These do become part of the YouTube channel and can be accessed on the Idaho Parents Unlimited's website, as well as the Idaho Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health website, free to everybody. So in addition to that, one of the major components, this was my priority in that this was what the actual project was tailored to. Something that we have been discussing with multiple school districts. Boise School District was the first to actually reach out to Idaho Parents Unlimited and request that we record podcasts for parents on procedural safeguards. So for parents to be able to understand their rights and responsibilities when it comes to the special education process and all related services. This can be an extremely confusing process, and so it's ideal to have many podcasts for parents to access, especially when it's chapter by chapter, and so not so overwhelming. It's probably one of the most boring things that people can read if you have to just access it online, and extremely difficult to understand. Usually we would bring in a lawyer who would be able to filter through questions and answers if we were to actually develop or participate in a training really specific to procedural safeguards. So this would be following the exact guidance within Idaho, and then tailor it directly to IDEPA rule, which is where your Medicaid rules are, as well as the special education manual for Idaho. And then you have federal statutes. So all of those are components of the podcast, where to find the information, and then detailed information on how to access the processes. So we would start off with consent. Even if a parent or a school district were to request that a child, or potentially identify a child needing to be assessed and evaluated for possible special education services, a parent must sign consent in order for the school district to do so. So though somebody might request it or put in that request, the parent does need to sign consent. So there's an entire chapter process in the rights and responsibilities of parents when it comes to signing consent. Child find is a very serious issue. That's part of the first chapter within the special education manual, and each school district is federally mandated to identify students who potentially need specialized instruction, which is where you would find your special education or related services. School districts implement a multi-tiered system of support, which you might know it as results-driven accountability, or RTI, and so beyond RTI is really the multi-tiered system of support. And so that means that schools can provide intervention for reading and math. If students fall behind, they might not need specialized instruction. But within the procedural safeguards, it's clearly lined out that schools cannot use that as a reason to deny the assessment process for possible special education services. So though a child might be receiving response to intervention, which again is not special education services, they still could put a request in to assess and evaluate. And then again, that first step would be signing consent. Prior written notice would be school district giving the parent prior written notice, so everything in writing that breaks down exactly what the school district plans to do. If the parent conflicts with that or disputes that, then there's a dispute process, and we'll get into that. But the evaluation process would be then, if the school district decided, yes, this is a child we will assess and evaluate, then they have 60 days to do that. 60 days from the day that they sign consent to full implementation. That would be 60 school days. And so these are the things that we would break down for parents, and that there are timelines of events. Schools are subject to those. I would say a lot of schools in Idaho are not familiar with the exact process, the procedural safeguards. So though I think these podcasts would benefit parents, they would highly benefit school staff as well. Then that eligibility process, so you go through, they have to assess and evaluate in all areas of concern. So if parents include areas of concern and then the schools identify area of concerns, they have to be in all of those areas. Then there's an eligibility meeting after that. During this timeline of the 60 days, they have an eligibility meeting. The full implementation is within that 60 days. So then there is an individualized education plan created if the child were found eligible. If the child was not found eligible and the parent disputed that, they could put in a request for an independent education evaluation. And again, that's in your procedural safeguards. So these will be all the mini podcasts. And then reevaluation every 3 years. The school is required to reevaluate to see if the student still qualifies for specialized instruction. Every year, annually, they are to show at a monthly or an annual meeting progress. So is there progression, is there a regression, and then we analyze the data. There should always be data provided at least quarterly to parents to review, especially at any opportunity that the school would send home progress reports. Children receiving special education should also receive those as well. And again, this is just kind of a snapshot at what the podcast would look like. Here in this picture, I was unfortunately attached to a heart monitor, in that I had just been in the emergency room the night before. So again, something that I really want to make very clear through this whole, not just the service learning process or just working through the multidisciplinary studies process, is that, you know, a lot of barriers, a lot of family dynamics, personal issues, full-time job, and then you have a full-time school and then service learning. So, you know, it definitely is a trying time, but I would say that these two major projects that I've done for Idaho Parents Unlimited not only met their goals, but met the other organization's goals as well. So these mini podcasts, we did them over a course of, we exceeded the 15 hours of the volunteer time that I'm required to do within the service learning. I would say I've exceeded it well over 30 hours, though I think my submitted time was for the full 15 hours. And these podcasts we did in multiple venues, multiple areas, and in different parts of the organization, and as far as location. So we tried to spice it up, we tried to make it dynamic, and we tried to change somewhat of just the visibility of it. And so again, we just continued to provide these podcasts. So this was a major source of my project. Something that I decided to add in addition to this, because as now meeting my ultimate goal within the Multidisciplinary Studies program, meeting my ultimate goal of now being an executive director of an organization, the Idaho Anti-Trafficking Coalition. We decided to become a sponsor, partnering with the Idaho Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health as well as Idaho Parents Unlimited in sponsoring a screening of screenagers here in the Boise area. This is something that the Idaho Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health and IPOL, Idaho Parents Unlimited, has been working on as far as in the Treasure Valley and in some parts of East Idaho, been very successful. A lot of donors, and as you can see with that tiny little black logo there is now my logo. And so I wanted to finalize my service learning project by pursuing and soliciting sponsorships for this screening, seeing that it would tie right into my own personal work. It ties right into the online safety and monitor of social media and screen time, especially among our teenagers, and really wanting this to the showing to actually happen here in the Boise area. So not only did this meet the goal of the organization that I provided service learning for, it is meeting my own professional goal within my new organization. So just wanted to say this was an amazing opportunity for me to continue to provide, you know, a lot of work and pursuing some of those additional goals that were hard to meet even while I was working at IPOL. And because the organization has struggled somewhat, losing me as their program coordinator, I really wanted to be able to give them some additional time, and that this was an opportunity for me to really prolong the inevitable, but at least provide them with some professional development myself, and we really just pursued and locked down these specific grant goals, and now she can add them to her updated grant. So thank you so much.